see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
What unites people? Armies, gold, flags, stories. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it.
If you want to stand out from everybody else, you need to get into storytelling.
Draw a different frame around the same set of circumstances and new pathways come into view.
Welcome to Artefact Live with me, Scott MacArthur, where we look at the art and science of story. We don't care who you are, whether you're a bricklayer, a professor or a speaker, all we care about is you being a good storyteller.
Thank God the drummers arrived.
It's time to realise that facts tell, but it's stories that sell.
Get me some nasty and get it now or someone's getting shot.
And that's a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. 1,000 comments.
Selling a hemorrhoid cream to someone who's got hemorrhoids.
Got a whip.
I was born into a deep contradiction.
This stuff's magic.
God, that's so clever.
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it?
That was a great start. Marvellous.
The wonders of going live. If you're tuning in for the first time, there's normally music that accompanies most of that little video at the beginning. I bet you, as I said to you earlier, Paul, the problem between the keyboard and the chair.
Yeah, must be.
I've done something wrong. Anyway.
Never mind.
Welcome to Artefact Live, the art and science of storytelling with me, Scott MacArthur.
And me, Paul Crick.
Well, last week we had an interesting discussion, didn't we, about courage.
We did.
Yeah, and it's left me thinking about all sorts of things, Paul. I don't know where your head is with it, but certainly I've got some learning to do, I think. I've got some reading to do and some learning to do. Because
well, I downloaded The Work again, which I haven't watched yet. So I bought it on YouTube, but I am going to watch it again because it is pretty electric stuff. And obviously it's come up again for whatever reason it's come up again. So it's due to watch.
Yeah, no, I we could maybe even do that together, actually, and watch it together because it's one of these. I've seen it, but it was a long, long time ago.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, so this week we have something entirely different for you. So, Paul, why don't you give us a little intro before we get Jen on to the camera?
So, really building on the idea of courage, one of the courageous things we need to learn to do as human beings is to find our own voice. And I thought, I wonder if there's anybody out there that's an expert in this field. And it just so happens that I've probably got one of the global experts on this topic. The reason it's important is because most of the world will kick against you and try to sort of keep you quiet or keep you in a corner, or children should be seen and not heard, those kinds of ideas that sort of tend to keep us small. And yet when we find our voice and we have the courage to stand up, then and to tell our story, then very often we inspire others to action. So I think that was sort of the idea of inviting our guest this week to come and talk to us. And I've known Jen since I got involved with a podcast years ago called The Modern Vocalist. Hello, Rob, if you're watching. I used to do the editing, line up the interviewees, and he gave me a list, and this person was on it, and I went, well, I'll just dive in and phone up. And we did the interview, and it was fantastic. And at the end of it, of course, I went and had a look at Jen's bio, and I went, oh my God, I've just interviewed this person. Her bio and her experience and her knowledge is amazing. Well, since then, we've known each other for about 10 years now, and I'm blessed to be able to call her a friend. And she's just fantastic as a human being. her own story is amazing, and what she does now in terms of helping people to truly find their voice, whether that's in the world of the performing arts, or whether that's in the world of leadership, or whether that's public speaking, is really something to behold. And I'm lucky in that she taught me to find my singing voice. It isn't the best singing voice in the world, but it's a good one. I have quite happily gone from sort of singing timidly in the car to being a living legend as I'm driving to wherever I'm driving to. So yes.
Jen's laughing in the background, folks. You can't see her. Should we get her on then? What do you think?
I think so.
Let's
I've
get her
talked
on.
enough.
Hello, Jen.
Hi, guys. Paul, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And hi, Scott and everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I think that was my challenge when Paul sent your bio over to me. I was like, Stevie Wonder, Def Leppard, what? So it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. It really is great to be here.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, as you know, the format of the show is really about bringing an artifact. So I know you've sort of teased us a little bit before we got started, but I can't wait to find out what it is you've got. So what did you bring?
Well, I want to preface this by saying that as I thought about your invitation and an artifact, I had about 10 different things that I thought I really wanted to share, but I realized that 9.9 of them would make me sob hysterically at 7:30 in the morning here. And I thought, I haven't quite enough tea for that. So I decided to bring something that is equally meaningful to me. And I think really ties into, Paul, your beautiful introduction about my work. And so what I brought actually was my book. And why I'm sharing it is not to promote my book, not at all, but I decided, and I know this is about storytelling, but please interrupt me if I go on and on too long, but
you could never do that.
Well, then you guys can take an hour break and I'll
okay,
see you
great.
in an hour.
See you in an hour. The floor is yours.
Yeah.
But why I decided to bring this one instead of my husband and my child and so many other beautiful, sweet mementos and memories, is that I, like so many people, have had ups and downs with my voice, my self-expression. And to make a very long story even longer, I I always had a very intuitive relationship with my voice. And then when I went to university to study, I got very confused. I got very waylaid. I started looking at things in an entirely intellectual way that left me not only just vocally confused, but in pain. And so, and in ways I'm happy to discuss if you'd like, it took me quite a while, but I unraveled that.
Mm-hmm.
That pain, it was a difficult journey back, but I did return to that natural and intuitive and wonderful, cherished relationship with my voice. And then as I started performing with artists like you had mentioned, and writing songs and all the rest in my career, I would get these emails. How do you sing that way? Why does it look so easy? Why don't you seem nervous, et cetera? And this is at the dawn of email, just to date myself. And I found I was saying the same things over and over and over again. So finally someone said, why don't you just gather all those emails? Why don't you just put it into a book? And I thought, I'd never thought about writing a book. So let me go ahead and do that. And it really was and is a labor of love. It's been out about 10 years and it's still selling very well. And it's such a true, maybe I'll cry anyways, a true humbling honor to still weekly receive emails that this has really changed my life, helped me give myself permission to sing, permission to speak, permission to be, permission to not know. And so to the artifact piece of it, part of the journey for me, and I saw that you put the cover there for a moment, was that one of the things after I had gone through that experience was that I'm a naturally very trusting person, but obviously that had been I became a little wary after that experience. Who do I trust? Who do I partner with? How do I learn again to relax and release into diving into experience. And so I have had and have a very dear friend, Randy Hassan, who actually painted this gorgeous cover. It's actually, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a huge painting.
Oh yeah.
Itself, and it is it's the size of this whole back wall. I also have it downstairs, but and he said, I'd love to just take a look at what you've written. I hear you're writing this book. So I shared it with him, and he said, I'd love to paint the cover. And I thought, well, that sounds amazing, but what if it's bad? What if I don't like it? I don't know anything, And so he said, trust me. And so I did. And so I'm glad by the way, I have a tissue here just in case.
Okay.
Always be prepared.
But what he did, and I don't know, I'm sorry, the lighting's probably terrible, but he had come to one of a show that I did and took a picture of that. And so that's actually me singing.
I'll put the other picture up for a sec.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's better than me. And then he went through and took words from the manuscript, gift, transformation, freedom, and worked them into the cover. And then that music along the side, and it goes on to the back, are actually, he asked to borrow the sheet music of my own songs from that show.
Right.
And literally hand drew them out. And it's along the spine and on the back. Anyways, needless to say that when he showed it to me for the first time and said, what do you think? Sob is an understatement. And it was really, in a way, a very full circle journey, because I had gone, as I had said, from trusting my voice, trusting myself, to having this sort of unhappy watershed moment of going to a place to learn to sing and doing the opposite, having all these struggles. And just like vocally, it had become this incredibly empowering experience to unlearn and relearn. Honestly, it's in hindsight, the best thing that could have happened, because it not only gave me empathy to understand what people go through when they doubt themselves, doubt their voices, can't find their comfort with their instrument.
Yes.
But it taught me how to really trust myself, to know I can trust myself in my voice, rather than just, it just works when I want it to. And similarly, this experience with Randy Hassan gave me the privilege of relearning to indeed trust others completely and wholly. Hands off, leap from the platform, dive into the air and fly.
So what was it that was I mean, Paul mentioned in the intro the link with courage, and obviously you've reinforced that, Jen. There is clearly a link with your experience and courage. What was it that was holding you back? Was it trust in yourself, or what was it?
Well, I think after I'd had that experience in university, I don't know at the time, to be totally truthful, I had even thought that way. So of course I'm reflecting. Oh, Nikki, you're welcome. I think that it was a very subtle thing where, because of that experience at university, I thought, can I trust what other people tell me? Can I go into interactions, learning and even personal, and really have my heart wide open? Or do I need to really keep that filter, that guard that looks like a filter, but is actually rather opaque. So I think that through Randy's kindness and love and grace, and also a wonderful teacher who I speak about in the book named Myra Tate, who's since passed, through the loving guidance and warmth and care of people, it really reminded me to again be courageous. And I think, and this is a topic I'm particularly passionate about, and Scott, as Paul knows, please interrupt me if I'm going
All right.
on the wrong road. But, I think that we live in a culture that thinks of vulnerability as a liability. And I have found, to hopefully answer your question, that vulnerability really is, at least in my life, the gateway to courage, to true courage. And actually to withhold, to defend, to hesitate, not only leaves me not acting courageous, but not at all feeling courageous.
Okay.
So the thing I'm curious about, and I'm sure people watching are curious about, so you rediscover the voice, you have this performing career, but you transitioned, didn't you? What was it that? What did you transition to, and what was it that led you to that?
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it was the book. So I had a couple of things. So I had a wonderful career singing backup for artists and companies and traveled the world. It was really a dream. I'm one of those people that's lucky enough to say I've lived such an extraordinary life. And I was in my mid 30s and the book was selling well. And when I was on the road, I would do master classes and I really loved it. I'm sure you and some of the people joining us probably can relate, but I never again thought I would write a book. I never thought I would be a teacher. All I knew is I wanted to sing. That's all I ever knew. But I found myself falling more and more in love with things that I had never considered. And that it takes something to get there, doesn't it? Because
I think so, yeah.
we have in our minds, I am a singer. There's this linguistic label. And so I'm therefore not a teacher, or therefore not an author.
I think there's another side to that, which is sort of Stephen Pressfield's view, which is, he talks about we live two lives. We live the life that we live, and we live the unlived life. And sometimes that unlived life is because we don't have the courage to go, oh, actually, I'm going to do this, even though everybody thinks even though I've done a PhD in some scientific subject and I've built an academic career. Stephen Covey talks about, sometimes we run into the jungle with the ladder, we put it against the tree, the first tree we see, we run up to the top of the ladder and we go, oh, crap, wrong jungle.
Well, it's interesting. I have Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield here and
yes.
in the other room. So yes, I'm very familiar with their work. Yes, I think, well, language is another passion of mine. And I love this one expression. I don't know who said it, but the context is decisive. So we often in our effort to find freedom, like I am going to do this, I'm going to be courageous, to your point, and, put my stake in the ground and become this thing. We forget that there's a whole realm behind us of things that we might unconsciously be saying, I'm therefore not those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that our ladder be very large and that our jungle be very large. Ladder on the earth.
Yes.
Yes, I agree totally, Paul.
So you started to indulge in these things, and you've sort of ended up in quite an eclectic place now that embraces. And I guess the place I'm going to go is you became a board certified therapist. Tell us a little bit about what took you to that journey, particularly, because it's very specific. I think I know the answer, but do tell us.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd love to hear your answer.
No, you wouldn't. Nobody likes a smarty pants.
No, not at all. It was kind of a meandering path, and it was when I was in my mid 30s. Actually, this is a good story. I was on tour with Cirque du Soleil. I was a singer in one of their shows. It was another incredible experience, and I'll never forget this. I woke up in a hotel room, a beautiful hotel room. I think it was a Four Seasons somewhere in some city, in some kind of, I don't even remember where it was. And I loved touring. So I should preface this story with that. And I woke up one day and the birds were singing. I looked out the window and I thought, and I think I was about 34, 35. And I thought, I'm good. And as I said, the book was selling well, and I had a lot of interest from people working with me, and I wanted to have a family, and I hadn't met John yet. But when the tour was done, I came back and I started working with primarily singers, to your question, Paul, specifically. And I loved it. I loved working with them. It was heartbreaking to see the physical and emotional pain of having identity tethered to self-expression and not being able to give voice to the person and the instrument the way they wanted to. But I noticed that so many of these issues, these seemingly vocal issues, were actually emotional.
Right.
Caused or exacerbated by some personal thing going on. And so first intuitively, I would work on that, but then I did end up, that's why I went back and I thought, let me get, the academic underpinning in this work that I'm intuitively doing to not only, do the right thing and follow the rules, but also just, of course, to I'm a big believer in lifelong learning, to learn all that I can so that I can serve all that I can. So that's how that happened. And then to your other question about the kinds of different people I work with, the first time I worked with a non-singer, I was working with a Broadway singer, and a man made an appointment with me and said, my daughter recommended you. And I said, oh, do you sing as well? He said, no, I'm a CEO of a company, but she thought you could help me. And that's how that started. And I just, he had some vocal issues, but like the singers, they weren't really vocal. There were concerns about judgment, failing, all the things we all deal with. And I developed this ability to really recognize how those things manifested in the voice, and simultaneously work on the emotional issues that were causing those vocal manifestations, but also to learn how to help them learn how to play with the body and the voice in a way that actually released those emotional issues. So over the years, yes, I work with everyone from executives to singers to performers to public speakers to anyone. Frankly, I really love, I'm one of those lucky people. I love what I do. I love supporting people. I still write. I'm working on my fourth book. And so that's lovely too. Some people who either don't have the opportunity to work with me, I hope that I pour all of my heart and what I've learned into my writing, my articles. But I really do love to serve in that way. So
can I ask a question about the sort of the permission that what gives you the permission if you walk into a room, and I don't know the story, but you've got, Joe Elliott or Stevie Wonder or whoever in front of you, what gives you the permission to help them, to make them better? How does that work? I can't quite.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, so I actually sang with them. I didn't coach them.
Right. Okay. Right,
yeah.
Okay.
But I'll definitely speak to what it is like to walk into a room with them.
Yeah.
But I have worked with some Grammy and really, really famous people. And I think the short answer to both, and I'm happy to give a long one too, is humility.
Okay.
I think that, and I'm thinking of the answer, Scott, while I'm speaking. So
as we always do. Yeah. The wonders of live broadcasting, Jen. Welcome.
Yeah. I think that it's an interesting thing climbing any ladder, certainly the musical ladder, because whether you are confident or further on the spectrum, arrogant, you certainly have to generate something in yourself that says, I have the courage or the faux courage to get up there and perform and be great and project greatness so other people believe I'm great. And what often comes with that, as you know, is a compensatory, am I great? Am I not great? So most of us, at least in the music business, in my estimation, are walking around with simultaneously, they're flip sides of the same coin. This like, I can do this, I'm great, hire me. And like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Don't discover I'm a total fraud. So I don't know how or when it happened. I really think I've always been a lover of people. I've always loved and do love people. So I think somehow, and because of the work I'd already been doing and my curiosity about psychology and really our interconnectedness, I don't know. I just look at the humanity of the person, and I remind myself of my humanity. And back to vulnerability, I have many limitations, but I think one of my strengths is that when I meet people, whether I'm working with them or singing with them, I have no interest in impressing. My only commitment is to listen and love. And that has helped me, I think, not wet my pants when I meet with people who are just extraordinary and my heroes. But I think it also hopefully allows them to say, wow, this person really isn't, starstruck or trying to impress. She seems really just like she's seeing me. And that's always, it appears to have always really helped.
I think that's wonderful, because what that tends to suggest is that life really is a lot simpler than we choose to make it. If only we'd focus on that. The ability to see, hear, and love someone is what it takes.
Yes.
To be content, to be comfortable with vulnerability, and to have that that's kind of what we call courage in some ways.
Yeah, yeah.
And it belongs in so many settings. It belongs in a family setting. It belongs in to your world, to the music business, but it also belongs in other settings, like some stuff that's perhaps a bit more familiar to Scott and myself. Walking into client situations where everybody's looking to you to supposedly have the answer and be the great one, and this, that, and the other. The ability to walk in and say, well, I actually don't have the answer, but I'm open to a conversation that helps you explore it. So I absolutely love that, Jen. That's a real gem for that. So your second book, I wanted to just touch on that, because that took an interesting turn, because it took the detail a level lower, because it made the distinction between singing in a studio and singing on stage with a microphone. What are sort of, if you were to pick 2 or 3 sort of key insights that you'd share from that book that are useful, what would you? I know I'm kind of surprising you a little bit with the question, but what jumps to mind?
No, I meant when I said you can ask me absolutely anything.
Sure.
Well, a bit of background on that. So the reason I wrote the second book is that after the first book, people were saying, oh, that's so helpful. What about this, though? What about this? So the second book literally is actually, I have it right here, and randomly, also painted by my friend Rachel Keiss. So I took that courage and I kept it going. Mm-hmm. And it was all the things, the main themes are the history, the evolution of the voice. Why do we get so nervous? Mm-hmm. The technology on stage and in the studio, which is what you're talking about, Paul. And then the third one, I think, which is probably the most important, is the relationships on stage and in the studio. So to answer your question, everyone has a different path, but many singers, we train, we work to develop our voices. It's a very solo enterprise. We practice, we do this, we work with a teacher, we maybe are in a choir, we do shows, but it's a solo enterprise. And then when you end up doing your first big shows, or certainly when you get into the studio, you are thrust into relationship with someone on whom you must rely to deliver your voice. So whether that's audio engineer or the live sound engineer. And I'm completely generalizing, which is terrible, but I liken it to sort of like the nerd and the cheerleader, or the captain of the team. I'm generalizing, but you have to be very outgoing, boisterous, emotional people, and then usually a man, although thankfully more and more women, who's like, sing louder, do this, so there are all these barriers kind of naturally inherent in the interpersonal dynamic, but also in the language. You have these audio engineers who understand EQ and compression and this whole realm that singers understand in a sense, but not academically. And so I talk quite a bit about the nuance of how to navigate those divides, but more importantly, the love. Mm-hmm. How do you, in moments of the stress of performance, yourself to say, I need help, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. How do you prioritize building that relationship? Because I think most people don't think about that, and a lot of people don't realize it's to their peril. Careers are made and not made based on their performers' ability to understand the technology, understand the relationships, and to know how to navigate both. So that's a big one. So it's about it sounds very niche, singing on stage and in the studio, the psychology, relationships, and technology, but it really is. I've had a lot of people nowhere near the world of music write to me and say, that helped my marriage, that helped me understand my son better, because I'm not saying it's it is talking about singing, but it's really about how do we understand people who we need the most, who maybe are the hardest to understand. So that's hope with that.
No, that's brilliant. And of course, you've subsequently sort of taken the subject further. So you talk about being trauma informed now, and I think that the T word is something that sparks fear into the hearts of many. particularly in the corporate world. I've had people say, "Oh, you can't talk about that. It's off limits. This, that, and the other." And I say, "Okay, well, I'll talk about resilience then,"
Yeah.
and them not knowing that that's the flip side of that. What took you there, and what is it? How is that important to your work?
Well, it's a great question, and it might be a surprising answer. Trauma is a word, actually, just full transparency, I don't like that word at all. I don't care for it. A wonderful company run by a woman named Gillian Page, the company's Meisner in Music, invited me to do a presentation in their trauma-informed singing series. And I shared with her, I'm like, that's not a word I use very often, but I've been very, again, humbled. I think one of your questions, Scott, that you sometimes ask people is, what have you changed your mind on recently? And this is definitely one of those. I had this knee-jerk trauma. I just don't like that word. I don't like the way it makes me think of victimhood. I don't find it empowering. I don't find it helpful. But in preparing for this workshop, which is in June, I think on the 11th, it's made me realize the arrogance of my own arrogance of not being willing to be open-minded about language that might serve others. So again, back to this notion of how language can liberate us, but also imprison us, I found that, well, let's put the word trauma aside. What is it that these people are looking for? What is it, Paul, that people who, the people who don't like to use the word resilience because it frightens them in some way, why do they lean on or feel comfortable with the word trauma? And let me get curious about what they're looking for and how I can meet that need. So that's where I am in that journey now. So I'm going to be a workshop, and hopefully, really being curious and humble and really listening beyond that word and to that word of what, and specifically to your question, what pains, trauma to me is pain magnified, is pain, embodied. Trauma to me is pain calcified and hardened and unable to let go. And so how much more compassionate do we need to be with those people who feel, lost in the throes of that kind of a monster, of a demon?
Well, it's also, going back to where we started, one of those things that prevents you and blocks the self-expression. The ability to trust self, the ability to release that energy to say, actually, ta-da, this is me, and this is what I'm going to put in the world.
Well, one thing I know for sure about trauma, and I've always known it, but now that I'm giving myself permission more to really lean into the term and to let go of my resistance to the term, is that even though I'd never really used the word, I'm very familiar with the idea that the pain we have, even the stories that we have, positive, negative, they are embodied. I don't think that we are mind and body. I mean, a feeling I have, as we now know, thanks to technology, when you have a thought or a feeling that, you're all sorts of hormones are coursing through your body. You're completely affected. And so when we have pain and anguish that has been thickened or hardened, either through repeated incidents or the repetition of our story making about it and our holding on to it and identifying with it, that does get stored in the body. And one part of my work that I do love and feel that I'm successful at is helping people identify that and move that.
Can I ask a question about the voice specifically, but relating to storytelling? Because quite often, it's certainly in the corporate world, but also in my personal life, you meet someone who they're not good at telling a story. They really struggle with it. Now, I know there are emotional things they don't want to tell their story, and that can be discussed in another way. But there are some people, when they speak, you're just captivated by them. It's like, whoa. Is there any guidance or thoughts on that, Jen, and how someone who is trying to use their voice, whether it's singing or speaking or whatever, to really start to... one of my favorite phrases is this: it's storytelling is like an empathy engine.
Mm.
You know, because if you're really good at it, you create that thing between people. Have you any advice on how someone might begin to develop that engine?
Mhm. I have, well, a couple of thoughts come to mind. The first one is interesting. I say to a lot of my clients, I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job, but the majority of work you need to do really is just you practicing. A lot of people, I've worked with a number of people who've done TED Talks, for example, and they'll come to me and I'm ready and I will say, well, how often have you worked this speech, or how often have you practiced, or are you with Toastmasters? How often? Well, I haven't really. Well, don't spend 6 months just getting up and talking in front of anyone all the time, delivering your speech. Just do it for 6 months, 4 times a week, even if it's to yourself on Zoom and you watch it back, and you'll find you probably don't need my help. So I think a huge thing is, and I don't love the word practice, but doing it, just doing it. I love, and I'll get to the second point, but I love, in my first book, I talk about, I went to Ireland. I was curious, why is it so easy for some people to sing, that is so unselfconsciously, but also beautifully? And I went to Ireland and I looked at some of the culture there, specific to singing, and African-American churches were two that stand out in my mind. And I realized it's just what they do from a young age. I mean, people in Ireland would be in the bank and certainly the bars, but I remember being in a bank and some man just starts singing and everyone kind of turns around and smiles and goes about their day. Well, if you start singing in an American bank, they're going to literally, we need some help, Houston would be a problem. So I think it's the normalization.
That's interesting.
Of to your point, Scott, storytelling. Yeah. The second thought I have about, advice, I think that, and bear with me while I try to put this into words. When I'm speaking with someone, professionally, but also I feel this is personal, right now, but I'm talking right now, yes, but I'm also very much listening. I'm looking at your faces. I'm not speaking at you. I'm really listening and sharing. It occurs to me as a dialogue, even when I'm talking for 5 minutes straight. And I think that, and I do talk about this in the second book, that I think that the word performance is problematic for me too, because it implies a me to you. And I really love to think of it as a conversation. And I think when specific to storytelling or really anything, when we remove ourselves from community and get into our head of what story do I want to share? How do I say it? How do I write it? How do I deliver it? We're pulling back. You can even feel my energy. It's like, and now I'm going to say it to you. How do I get better at that? It's like, why do I want to tell the story? What impact do I want it to have on them? What expression do I want to see on her face? What do I want to have him feel when I say that? If I can, in the crafting and creation and practicing of that, remain present to the conversation rather than the storytelling. I mean, of course, there's nothing wrong with either term. I just like the conversation term. Then I think it's much more successful.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's got your focus right now? Because I know you, I noticed that you are now getting involved in one of the universities. What are you up to there now? And how's your work going in there?
Well, it's interesting. I don't consider myself at all a storyteller. When you both invited me, I thought, do I have any stories to tell? But now I hear myself telling you all these.
I know you well, Jen.
I guess they are stories. That's an interesting story. So I was, it never occurred to me to teach at a university, but I got this email one day from this wonderful man who said, I'm a little starstruck writing to you. I hope you don't mind. He said, I've read your books. I think you're great. I thought you lived in New York. And someone once said, no, I think she lives in Washington, D.C. now. So I don't know if that's true, but if it is, would you be interested in coming in and doing some work at American University, which literally is down the street? And I said, I'd love to. And I think he was surprised by that. Paul, as you know, I really am a big believer in say yes to everything.
Yes, you taught me that.
And I said to my husband, I said, what do you think of this? He said, I think that sounds great. I said, good, because I already told him yes. Well, you never know what it'll bring. And I tend to sometimes act before I think, because my thoughts are very rarely helpful. So I said, I can only really give you one day a week. And he said, I'll take anything. And it's and we just wrapped up the first semester. It has been such a joy. It has been lovely. You know, in my work, it's largely one-on-one, it's consulting and coaching, and writing is certainly a lonely kind of solitary experience. So to go into this beautiful campus and this wonderful Department of Performing Arts and be in community with some really great colleagues and work with these singers, it's been, I have gotten so much more than I have given. And then I'm also working on my fourth book, which is great. Seeing clients. I'm trying to think of what else I'm getting up to.
You're doing a series of masterclass. You're continuing the masterclasses, aren't you?
Yes. So I do 6 masterclasses a year, every other month. They're now on Zoom, which has been great because we have people from all over the world, and it's really reasonably priced, and every one is different. Paul, you've been to one, and
I have, yes.
And they're so fun.
Was that the one where you made me sing?
That was.
Do you remember that? Just so Scott knows, there's like this queue of people lined up with Jennifer. We're all in this group on Zoom, and I'm at the time I was a fairly nervous performer because I was relatively new to it, and we got to the end and it was an hour long. And I sent a message on Zoom saying, "Oh, it's okay, Jen. We'll do it next time. Don't worry." Thinking, thank God for that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have. And of course, Jen jumps in and goes, "Is everybody all right if we just stay another 5-10 minutes or so?" It'd be really great to hear Paul sing. And I'm going, "No." And sure enough, we did it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which was fun.
But they're really just love fests. And again, Scott, to my answer to your question about storytelling, I think again, singers are, it's such a solitary development, and it's meant to be in community. So it's 2.5 hours and people come on and they all look like this.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "I love you. You're so great. Thank you." And so they're very special. They're very special. So yes, Paul, those are still going on.
Yeah. Good.
So given the time, if you don't mind, I'll just ask one of the
Sure.
other questions. I'd really appreciate hearing this, because it's been lovely listening to the way you've developed and the way you think about, service, etc. But what's your favorite story? What's the one story that you love and like to share with others?
Well, I have many. Again, I picked one that hopefully won't make me sob, but I printed it out because this one, when I think about, it's kind of like when someone asks you, "What's your favorite movie?" and you can't think about it, and then at 3 a.m. you're like, "Oh, of course." So I'll think at 3 a.m. tomorrow, I'll think of maybe a better one. But this one, I use versions of this with my clients all the time. But I came across it 20 years ago. It's an old Cherokee, I guess, proverb. So, and again, I've got my tissue ready. So,
should I get mine ready?
No, I don't know. Well, now I'm saying this in the hopes that
I've zoomed in on Jen just in case.
Yes, excellent, good.
So, I just printed it up because I really wanted to do it justice. So it says, an old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside of me," he said to the boy. "A terrible fight between 2 wolves. One is filled with anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other wolf is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you and inside every other person too." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" And the old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." And I love that story. I mean, I just think, isn't that everything? Isn't that everything? The one
I got goosebumps when you said which one will win.
Yeah.
That triggered me.
Yeah. Now there are variations on this. I'm sure that the accurate, the wholly accurate one, but I think that we thankfully in our culture are coming to a time where I think generally we recognize we are not our thoughts and our feelings. But I think that practically it's a relatively new phenomenon for most people. I think, for so many years in psychology and in our culture, it's like, well, what I think, what I feel is who I am. And I think that this is such an important reminder that just as we are what we eat, we conform to what we attend to, So it's up to us to decide. Not that we want to ignore our feelings or our trauma or our pain, but we really can, kind of like a dog with a lead. We really can direct and redirect our attention to what we want to attend to. So I love that story.
What do you think of that, Paul?
Well, I knew you'd come up with a corker, so yeah, no, I love that. And I think you're right. If you attend to the television and the news too much, then you get one view of the world. Whereas if you just go outside and you go, how many different colours are there in the grass? How many shades of green are there? Yeah. Can I go and pay attention to that instead? Or can I just enjoy the awe of the design of the cherry blossom and that kind of thing, which sounds kind of like effeminate, I'm sure, to some people, but there is a grand design that certainly as I get older, I become more aware of and pay attention to. And the more I pay attention to that and attend to that, the less time I've got to attend to this. And therefore, I haven't watched television, mainstream television, for about 4 years now, and it feels different. It definitely feels different. So I think you're right. What you feed is really feed yourself, and what you put in, not just food but thinking and experiences, really, really matters.
And I'll give you even a small example. I think sometimes we think we only make change when it's on a grand scale. When I open my computer and my browser starts up, for years it was my calendar, which is great. I love, I love what I do, but I don't know, I started feeling a little, just stressed. And I had an idea about a year ago. I thought, let me find like an affirmation website or something that pops up a beautiful saying every day. Something that simple. When I open my computer, that pops up and I read it. I take a moment and think about it. That little change has made a huge difference in my life. Wow. I'm starting with, just sort of an affirmation, something beautiful, something that presences me to heart and spirit, rather than who am I seeing at 9 o'clock? What am I doing? Where do I have to be? Yeah. And to your point about nature, I start every day, even in the rain. It's raining here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's raining here.
Well, always, but here. I get up at about 5:30. I don't look at my phone like you. I don't watch the news. I don't, and I just quietly, I go outside. I watch the sunrise. I take about a half an hour walk. I'm just in silence, and it shapes me. It shapes me. So.
Before I've got to ask you another question about music, because and the voice, because I just love it. There's a moment now. I know there's a technical term behind all of this, but do you know when you get 2 voices or 3 voices or 100 voices, and there's a harmonic thing that happens? Yes. That if you listen to a lot of music, you get it. When you hear Simon Garfunkel singing, both great singers, but together, magic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That to me is I don't know what you think. I mean, to me, that's a wonderful thing, because it's just not possible on your own. But I guess you can these days with technology, but I love that moment. I mean, is that something that you like or hear, or is it something just that am I just losing my marbles?
No. And it's funny. Can I just point out, isn't it interesting, Scott? You wonder if you're losing your marbles talking about something so beautiful, like Paul said too, something about it might seem effeminate to talk about nature. Isn't it interesting how far we all have gotten away from, as Nikki just said, the intelligent design of nature? Thank you. How far we've gotten away from the simple joys and beauty of life that we almost have to apologize for it, you know. But and I do it too. But you know, Scott, to your question, you're talking about harmony when
Yeah.
a single voice can only do so much, but voices, whether in unison, aka sharing the same note, or different notes, it's not just the harmonics and the overtones that can emerge, getting a little technical, but it's also the shared resonance.
Yes.
You know, we know that mothers that hold their babies and they breathe, the breath gets in sync, and when they sing, the rhythm and the vibration have tremendously positive effects on the child. But the same is true with us, you know, curmudgeon-y, skeptical, intellectual adults. And so, I think that it's yes, and choirs. It's interesting when I work with newer singers or singers who are nervous. I say, even professionals, I'll say, you should join a choir. And they look at me like, why would I join a choir? And for this exact reason. You need, I'll say to them, I believe with humility, you need to remind yourself what this is all about. This is not just about you singing songs and writing songs and looking good and succeeding. It is about rediscovering or discovering for the first time the joys and simple and profound pleasures of music making in community.
Lovely.
You know, and that includes, again, listening more than you speak. You know, when you sing with someone like Simon and Garfunkel, you must listen as much as you deliver in order to have that blend.
Yeah.
So
it amazes me because it's like, sorry, I'll get quite enthusiastic when I start talking about music. But you know, if you listen to like Crosby, Stills and Nash, great example, right? You got Crosby and you've got Nash, and then Stills comes in at an angle, and you think, how the hell does that work?
Yeah.
And when you read about how he does it, he doesn't even think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
well, you know,
beautiful.
I have two thoughts for you. You know, one, I think, and I'm not in any way diminishing the talents of these people we're talking about. And, you know, Malcolm Gladwell and Glenn Kurtz talk about 10,000 hours. And, you know, but I think that it's a fluency. You know, there's nothing you couldn't say in English. It's a fluency. When you speak that language so long for so many years, you find ways, well, that word's not quite right. Let me go to my mental thesaurus and find one of 10 of them. It's the same thing with harmonies. I could go here or there. So it is beautiful. And I think it's a fluency. But I want to recommend to you, Scott, if you don't know it, and Paul and everyone out there, speaking of Art Garfunkel, he, after his time with Paul, did this incredible collaboration with Buddy Monlock and Maya Sharp. I don't know if you know it. They released a record called Everything Waits to Be Noticed.
Right.
And I promise you that I can't wait to hear. I just can't wait to hear your thoughts. And forgive me if I'm getting some of this a little wrong, but basically, because I knew the producer on it, Art Garfunkel, who was never a lyricist for Simon and Garfunkel, had these journals and really wanted to share some of his own thoughts. And so he worked with these two very terrific national songwriters, and they came up with songs based on his life and his journal and his memories. And Scott, to your point, the harmony, first of all, the songs are the title track. If anyone wants to just dive in, Everything Waits to Be Noticed. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. The song, the music, the harmonies, Scott, the way that you said, like, there it is, the way they dance. I mean, it is like my morning walk in nature. It is like that affirmation. It is that for me. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts, but
that sounds like we should do one of those videos where you record yourself reacting to something for the first time, Paul. That might just be something we should do.
Can I say something? You absolutely. I would pay to watch that, because I mean, I've listened to that for years, and literally when it comes on, I'm like, where's, I can,
Great.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, I need to ask you that, just to make sure that we've not missed anything. You mentioned something you'd changed your mind on earlier, the word trauma. Was there something else you had in mind that you wanted to share with us as well? Or was that your main one?
No, it's interesting. Like the other questions, I'm sure something terrific will come to me.
Yeah.
The thing that well, I don't want to get into politics, but I do find the older I get, the more nuanced I hopefully think.
Okay.
And I find myself like Paul, even though I'm not, I don't watch, I try to really stay, I stay informed, but I stay away from the breaking news of it. But I find myself being much more open-minded about what could be true. And I find myself less on a team liberal, for example. And I'm not saying I'm on any team at all, but so I think that I've been very humbled to realize that in my younger years, my passion to be right in the political game often had me very righteous.
Yes.
So much more. So I think in that sense, I don't know if I've changed my mind necessarily, but when I hear anything, I think, I wonder what the other side is, just so I can. So I do that. I find I do a lot. And then the only other thought I had when I read that question was, I hope that I'm someone who, and I think I am to some extent. I'm sure I know I have areas to grow in, but whenever I find myself thinking I'm right about anything, I know I'm in trouble. So I always hopefully have a sense of, well, I think that that's accurate, but I remember too that, I have to keep an open mind about it. So I don't know if that's actually answering your question, but that's my relationship with mind being made up and changing.
It's funny, we kind of touched on that earlier, didn't we? Because I think, and Paul and I have touched on this once before, the older or the more experienced you get, and they can be mutually independent or exclusive, I guess, but the less you feel like and it does make you, I mean, you're only really certain when you're in your 20s. And one of the things that I have a little alarm bell goes off when someone is absolutely certain about something. I usually think, they probably don't know anything about that then. It almost gives me the opposite to what they're trying to project. Not always, but yeah, that's an interesting one. It really is.
That's why I love, we have words that come and go in and out of fashion. And I was very pleased to see the word expert kind of begin to wane, because, and again, to each his own, no judgment. I mean, we all have language that works for us. In speaking, for example, I don't like the word high note makes me think up, but the idea of being, or when people say she's an expert in something, I don't personally care for that, because I think it implies I know, if not all there is to know, I know an awful lot. And I find the more I know, the older I get, the more I'm not only realize I don't know, but the more comfortable I am with not knowing. And I love mind, like, I don't know. I hope when I meet every new client, I'm not coming with a bag of, I understand exactly what's happening. It's like, I don't know anything. Let me meet you and just come to you newly, hear you newly, just rediscover it all with you.
Yes. Very good. Well, what a wonderful conversation, Jen. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Pleasure.
There's a little thing here from Nikki. I don't know if that's something, common unity. This has reaffirmed a lot of things. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you.
That's nice.
You're welcome, Nikki. Thanks for being on there. Thanks for being in the audience.
And James is saying thank you as well. That's nice. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you round the fire on ARTEFACTLive.
Likewise. Thank you so much, and to everyone listening, I'm truly grateful.
Thank you. We'll hopefully have you on again in the future, because once your next book comes out, I'll be interested in talking to you about it. I don't know about you, Paul.
Oh, I'll probably have pre-ordered it. I've got the others.
I love it, and I really do want to know. I really would love if you guys, your thoughts on Everything Waits to Be Noticed. Truly,
I'm just about to talk about it. You've got me interested, So I always ask people, I've got your website here. Is there anywhere else that people can watch you work or engage in your daily thinking, etc.? Are you a Twitter user or a Twitch user or anything like that?
Well, thank you for asking. Yes, that's my website, findingyourvoice.com, and all the socials on there. And I write for Psychology Today, but again, links to everything are on the site. And please do stay in touch. And I have a newsletter that I send out maybe 4 times a year with just events like this and opportunities to connect. And I really look forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you from me. Thanks very much.
And Jen, thank you from me, as always.
We'll see you again. Thank you. Goodbye. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Paul, that was fantastic.
She's fabulous, isn't she?
I love that. I've heard a version, as she thought we would have done, of that wolf story before, but when she said it's up to you to choose which one you're going to feed, I got goosebumps. That was lovely. That was lovely.
I liked context is decisive. I will take that one to heart and remember that very much.
Yeah. I think we've got some homework to do as well.
Well, it's tough, isn't it? We've got to go and listen to an album.
I think we'll cope.
I think we'll survive.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Great. So I thought it was a night, and I didn't actually think the segue between Courage and Today was going to be there, but it was. You were absolutely right. It was bang on. So, right. So we're moving on to next week now. I think we've got someone special to you on next week as well, if it's still going to happen.
I'll say yes.
Yeah.
So we continue the art theme and the importance of finding the courage to express your voice was this week. So we're going to find a different way of expressing our voice next week. And we're going to talk to my good lady wife.
Fantastic. I can't wait to meet her.
Yeah.
That'll be very interesting. So,
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening to Artifact Live, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we always did. I don't know, look at us, we're both smiling like a pair of old idiots. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Scott MacArthur, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.